They say the moment your life breaks isn't a crash, but a quiet click, a gear slipping out of place so cleanly you almost miss it. Mine happened under hospital fluorescents and blue streamers, with laughter in the background and a cake that said, "Happy retirement, Bula." I was a nurse for 35 years. I know the sound of heart's changing rhythm. It's soft. It's precise. It's the breath you lose when you see your daughter-in-law glide into your party wearing your mother's dress, the very one you wrapped in tissue and cedar like a prayer. I knew that dress blindfolded. Midnight blue silk that threaded light like water, pearl buttons down a spine that once rested against my mother's proud back 28 years ago. I'd planned to wear it until Freya smiled sweetly and insisted I choose the safe beige Gerald bought, as if she were doing me a kindness. She didn't ask, she took. And when she crossed the room, all grace and ownership, I felt something ancient and steady in me tilt. "Doesn't Freya look stunning tonight?" Gerald murmured, the warmth in his voice aimed at her like a spotlight, and I heard the lock on a door I hadn't known existed slide into place. It was a look, simple as a pulse check, Freya's eyes lifting to his, the slightest tilt of her head, the way his gaze dropped knowingly to where silk kissed her waist, that small secret smile that lives between people who hold a private script. My champagne flute slipped and shattered, and everyone rushed in with napkins and concern, a flurry of kindness I'd taught them to practice. I smiled. I lied. I said I was fine. The floor sparkled with shards and the truth, and I cataloged it the way I catalog symptoms. The hand he placed on the small of her back, the extra breath she took leaning into it, the way they parted a beat too slowly. There are gestures that explain themselves. All you have to do is pay attention. David appeared with his gentle face and the worry that has followed him since he was a boy. "Mom, are you okay?" he whispered. And I wanted to scoop him back into the years when the worst thing we knew was a neighbor's cat gone still beneath our hibiscus. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said, because I have always been the fine one, the steady one, the woman who keeps small worlds from collapsing by pretending hers isn't. But the calm that filled me wasn't surrender. It was strategy, clean and bright. I cut the cake with steady hands and counted the seconds between Freya's laughs and Gerald's glances. When she finally reached me, turning in my mother's lace as if it had been sewn for her, she breathed, "I hope you don't mind about the dress, Bula. It just called to me." A line polished like a jewel, set to bruise. I looked straight into the clear blue that had fooled my son and said nothing. A message had been delivered. Mine was waiting in my purse. The envelope was cream, thick, deliberate. When I called, "Gerald," it cut through the room like the click of those hidden gears. He paled at the sight of it. Freya's confident smile thinned like ice underfoot. He reached, hands trembling, but 35 years of monitoring emergencies taught me timing is the difference between chaos and clarity. Not here. Not while my colleagues were still hugging me goodbye with frosting on their fingers. I took the envelope back. "This is a family matter," I said, and he swallowed that truth like a bad pill. The drive home took 20 minutes and a lifetime. Gerald sat stiff in the passenger seat, caught between apology and invention, staring at the envelope as if his gaze could burn it blank. In my rearview mirror, Freya's mouth moved fast in the silver Honda, hands carving excuses in the air while David watched the road like a man trying not to look at a fire. I felt the wheel beneath my palms, steady as a pulse, and remembered how this had begun, a receipt in a shirt pocket from a Tuesday dinner at our special restaurant, a new habit of showering the moment he got home, a phone that slept face down, the way Freya's visits found the hours when David worked, symptoms, then pattern, then diagnosis. In the porch light of our house, I held the envelope, and the gears inside my life slid once more, this time into place. I did not open the door so much as set a stage. Lights on in the living room, the grandfather clock ticking like a metronome, the coffee table cleared to a sheet of glass where truth could land without a place to hide. I set the envelope in the center and waited. Gerald came in first, pausing like a man at the lip of cold water, while the clock announced 9:10 p.m. in two soft chimes. Headlights swept across the curtains. Tires crunched. David's key turned, and Freya's perfume, too floral for winter, entered the room before she did. "Beulah, what is this?" Gerald tried a smile that wobbled. I kept my voice the way I kept a patient's airways, open, calm, unobstructed. "It's the moment we stop pretending." It had started with laundry, as quiet betrayals do. A receipt from our restaurant dated a Tuesday he'd claimed as overtime, amounts too generous for any client dinner. Then the shower running when he walked in the door, his phone face down as if the light might shame him. Weeks later, 7:30 p.m., I came home early from book club to find Freya's Honda, half hidden behind the Johnson's oak and Gerald's laughter, young, secret, braiding with hers in our living room. "After the retirement party, we won't have to pretend much longer," he'd said, words spoken with the breezy certainty of people writing the future of a woman who still paid the mortgage. I did what nurses do when a case stops making sense. I documented. Marcus Webb, former detective, investigator by trade and truth-teller by habit, slid a card across a coffee shop table at 8 a.m., and I said, "I need to know everything." 2 weeks later, I knew enough to drown in. 17 meetings, hotel parking lots, a kiss looped by the yellow line of a Comfort Inn, transfers from our joint account to an account in Freya's name, always amounts small enough to slip past alerts. The total, $87,000 across 8 months. Then the deed, brutal in its simplicity, our house, 30 years of family hung on its nails, quietly shifted into Freya's sole ownership. The paper looked like ash felt. Now, under the honest light of my living room, I slid the first photograph across the glass. "This is last Tuesday, 2:47 p.m., I said, and the clock seemed to echo the timestamp with the certainty of fate. David stared until the denial drained from his face and left only a terrible clarity. "How long?" he asked, eyes pinned to the image as if it might rearrange itself into mercy. Gerald reached for command and found none. "Son, this is between your mother and me." David didn't look up, his voice a thin wire. "How long have you been sleeping with my wife?" Silence widened. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked like punctuation. "At least 8 months," I answered, because facts keep blood moving when the heart wants to stop. I added the bank statement, the $25,000 that vanished 6 weeks after I'd mentioned Alaska, the trip we'd promised each other for years. Then the ledger of smaller thefts, a beadwork of betrayal along the bottom of each page, and finally the deed transfer. David's hands shook. Gerald deflated into the couch like a man learning gravity for the first time. "It's not stealing," he tried, a whisper searching for a foothold. "It's protecting assets." "Safe for who?" David cracked then, laughter like glass in a garbage disposal. "Safe for the woman lying to me while I work doubles? Safe for you and your mistress while my mother is erased from her own life?" Freya's smile returned like a blade sheathed in sugar. "David, honey, your mother is clearly overwhelmed. Retirement, hormones, maybe early dementia." "Shut up," he said, soft as a prayer and twice as final. The clock said 9:28 p.m. I placed the last page, a scan of the deed, between us, and the room understood that a threshold had been crossed. Gerald looked at his name where it didn't belong, and the color left him. In that small, suspended silence, I felt the last strand of old loyalty snap, and saw a glint in Freya's eyes that wasn't fear, but calculation, the look of someone reaching for a hidden weapon. Freya straightened, her tone changing from brittle defense to measured venom. "You think you've uncovered everything," she said, each word deliberate, "but you don't know half of it." I could feel Gerald tense beside her, confusion flickering behind his shame. David leaned forward, his voice steady but cold. "What are you talking about?" Freya smiled then, an awful practiced thing, and said, "Tell them about the pills, Bula." The room seemed to shrink. My pulse slowed the way it used to in an emergency, the instinctive calm before action. "Go on," I told her, my voice low. "Tell them what you mean." She folded her arms, gaining confidence as she spoke. "Your perfect mother has been stealing medication from the hospital. Oxycodone, Ativan, whatever she could get her hands on. I caught her with them myself. She's been popping pills like candy, maybe even selling them." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The accusation hung there, thick and poisonous, and I saw the flash of relief in Gerald's eyes, hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the narrative that saved him. David turned to me, disbelief shadowing his face. "Mom?" I didn't let the silence linger. "That's a serious claim, Freya," I said evenly. "So show me these photos you supposedly have." Her lips parted, and for the first time since this began, she faltered. "What?" "Show me," I repeated. "You said you took pictures. Let's see them." I lifted my phone, thumb swiping across the screen, because I have photos too. I turned it so they could see. The first image appeared, time-stamped, Freya standing at a CVS pharmacy counter, speaking to a young man in a red smock. "That's Tommy Hriss," I said, my voice clinical. "Pharmacy technician, currently under investigation by the DEA for selling prescription drugs illegally. He's been very helpful these past few weeks." Freya's face drained of color. "You're lying," she whispered. "He wouldn't—" "Oh, he did," I interrupted, sliding to the next photo. Freya exchanging money for a small white bottle in the parking lot. 18 documented purchases of oxycodone and Percocet. Street value around $4,000. Quite the side business you've been running, Freya. Gerald sank into his chair as if gravity had doubled. "Freya," he breathed. "Is that true?" She shook her head wildly. "It's not. She's twisting it." "Enough," I cut in, the word sharp. "Marcus followed you for weeks. He documented everything. The photos, the exchanges, the texts arranging your little sales. And before you say anything else, Freya, let me remind you, lying while under federal investigation isn't just foolish, it's criminal." David stood slowly, every muscle rigid, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "So this is who you are? You stole my mother's husband, her money, her home, and you were selling drugs on top of it?" Freya's mask cracked, replaced by fury. "You think your mother's innocent?" she snapped. "She's manipulating you all. You're all too blind to see it." I smiled then, not in triumph, but in a cold kind of clarity. "No, Freya. I just finally stopped pretending to be blind." From my purse, I pulled a final document, a restraining order signed that morning. "As of 2 p.m. today, you're forbidden from coming within 500 feet of me, my home or my workplace. Any violation means immediate arrest." Freya snatched it from my hand, scanning the page as her breath quickened. "You can't do this. I live here," she hissed. "Not anymore," I said softly. "The deed transfer you and Gerald orchestrated was voided this afternoon. Fraudulent asset transfers tend to unravel quickly when paired with criminal evidence." Gerald's head jerked toward me, shock written all over his face. You already reversed it?" "Of course I did," I said, meeting his eyes. "I told you at the party this was a family matter. I just didn't tell you which family would still be standing at the end of it." The silence that followed was surgical, precise, cutting, irreversible. I gathered the papers into the envelope and placed it back in my bag. "Gerald," I said, rising, "you have 24 hours to pack and leave my house. After that, you'll be trespassing." His voice broke as he said, "Bula, please, we can fix this." I stopped at the doorway. "You already did," I replied. "Just not in the way you meant." Behind me, Freya's voice rose, shrill with fury. "You think you've won, Bula. You think destroying your own family makes you strong." I turned, steady, unshaken. "No, Freya. I didn't destroy this family. I just saved what was left of it." That night, as I lay awake in my sister Carol's guest room, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts from Gerald cycling from apologies to threats to pleas. I deleted them all, one by one, until the screen was quiet. At dawn, I called Marcus. "It's done," I told him. "They know everything." There was a pause on the line, then his steady voice. "Then you did what you came to do." I stared out at the first light of morning and whispered, "Not yet. There's still one more truth left to face." The truth I hadn't told them yet was growing like a shadow beneath everything else. Marcus had hinted at it before, his voice careful, his tone professional. That morning, with my coffee cooling between my palms, I finally asked him to say it out loud. "You were right," he said gently. "Freya's been seeing an obstetrician in Scottsdale. She's 4 months pregnant." 4 months. My breath caught. June. That was when Gerald and I were still in counseling, when he'd held my hand across the therapist's couch and told me we could make it work, when he'd made love to me like a man trying to resurrect something sacred. I closed my eyes. "There's more, isn't there?" Marcus hesitated, papers rustling faintly over the line. "Yes, this isn't her first pregnancy. 2 years ago, 6 months before she married your son, she had an abortion." The air seemed to thin around me. "And the timing?" "Lines up," he said softly. "If the father wasn't Gerald, he's a ghost." For a long moment, I said nothing. The hum of the refrigerator, the birds outside Carol's window, even my own heartbeat, everything felt muted. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Send the records to my lawyer." Later that morning, David called. "Mom, can we talk?" His voice was rough, hollow. We met at a diner on the edge of town where the coffee was bitter and the waitresses never asked questions. He looked 10 years older, a man hollowed out by betrayal. "She's pregnant," he said before I could speak. 4 months, she told me last night. I reached across the table and took his hand. "I know." His eyes flicked up. "You knew?" "Marcus found out. There's something else you should hear before you decide what to do." I told him about the earlier pregnancy, about the abortion before she married him, about the timing that made every word of her marriage vows a lie. I watched him crumble in stages, confusion, denial, realization, until only exhaustion remained. "So she never loved me," he said quietly. "I was just the cover story." I squeezed his hand. "I don't know what she felt, but I know what she planned." He laughed once, sharp and broken. "You know what kills me, Mom? I wanted to have kids with her. I mentioned it a few months ago and she screamed at me, said we weren't ready. Now I know why." His eyes shone with something that was no longer sorrow but awakening. She was already pregnant with his. I wanted to say something to comfort him, but comfort felt dishonest. All I could offer was truth. "You can't control what she's done," I said softly, "but you can control what happens next." He nodded slowly, the first spark of resolve replacing the wreckage. "Then I'm done," he said. "No more pretending." That afternoon, I drove home. My home again. Gerald's car was gone, but Freya's silver Honda was parked bold in the driveway, defiant as ever. She was testing the restraining order. I called the police before stepping out of my car. Officer Martinez arrived within 10 minutes, young, composed, kind-eyed. When Freya emerged from the front door, her belly just visible under a tailored coat, she tried the performance that had worked on so many men before. "This is harassment," she said, chin high. "I'm pregnant. You can't arrest a pregnant woman for visiting her mother-in-law." Officer Martinez didn't even blink. "You can be arrested for violating a restraining order. Please turn around." The cuffs clicked quietly, efficient, merciless. As they led her to the patrol car, she twisted in the officer's grip to face me. "That baby is your grandchild, Bula. Gerald's child. Are you really going to let your grandchild grow up without family?" For the first time, I didn't flinch. "That child will have all the family it needs," I said calmly. "Just not you." That night, Gerald came back. He looked smaller somehow, like the world had shrunk him down to the truth of what he was. He stood in the doorway watching me box the last of his things. "The police called," he said quietly. "Freya's been charged. They said she'll be out on bail tomorrow." He hesitated, his voice trembling. "Bula, I never meant for it to go this far." I turned to face him, and for the first time I saw not my husband, but a stranger wearing his face. "When did you mean to stop, Gerald? When you drained the last dollar from our account? When she was pregnant with your son's wife's child? Or when you both decided I was too old to notice?" He sank into a chair, the one where he used to hold David as a baby, where we'd planned a life that no longer existed. "She loves me," he murmured, weak as a patient in denial. I pulled one last page from the envelope, the transcript Marcus had given me. "No, Gerald," I said softly. "She doesn't." He read the printed words, Freya laughing with her dealer boyfriend about the pathetic old man who hands over money like a trained dog. And with each line, his face fell further into ruin. "I've lost everything, haven't I?" he whispered. "Yes," I said. "You have." He looked up, eyes wet, voice breaking. "What about the baby?" I picked up my purse, the same one that once held the envelope that started all this. "That's between you, Freya, and whatever lawyer she can still afford. I'm done being responsible for your mess." At the door, he called after me, desperate. "Bula, please. We were married 30 years. That has to count for something." I looked back at him one last time. "It did count for something, Gerald. It counted for everything, until you decided it counted for nothing." Then I walked away, closing the door on the life I'd finally stopped saving. 6 months later, the morning light found me in the garden behind my house, the one Gerald once tried to sign away. The roses were blooming better than ever, the soil rich again after years of quiet neglect. Freedom, I'd learned, had a scent. Earth and coffee and something soft you can finally breathe into. My house was mine again, legally, completely. The court had undone every forged signature, every secret transfer, every theft. The bank accounts were restored, with interest. But what mattered most wasn't the money. It was that I could wake up without checking if someone else was lying beside me. The legal storm had moved quickly once Freya's arrest went public. Her plea deal included jail time and restitution. Gerald's role in the fraudulent transfers forced him to repay everything he'd stolen. David filed for divorce the next day. It wasn't easy for him. The pregnancy complicated everything, but I watched him grow stronger with every decision. He moved into a small house 10 minutes from mine, and for the first time in years, he laughed without bitterness. "She's nothing like Freya," he said of the new woman he was seeing, a teacher named Rebecca, gentle and grounded. "She actually likes me for who I am, not what I can give her." The baby, a girl named Madison, was born in February. Freya chose the name herself, perhaps believing it softened her sins. Gerald wanted to call her Hope, as if the word could redeem him. It didn't. He visits sometimes, pays child support, tries to pretend his choices were mistakes instead of design. I see him occasionally, gray at the temples, tired, alone. There's no triumph in it for me. Some lessons only come with pain that never fully leaves. Marcus visits every weekend now, usually with 2 coffees from the shop downtown. He walks through the gate I once locked for fear of betrayal and greets me with that easy smile of his. "Morning, beautiful," he says each time, and it still startles me, the quiet sincerity in it. We sit on the old porch swing, Gerald's swing, once a relic of false comfort, now reclaimed as mine, and watch the cardinals in the oak tree. I'd thought about removing the swing, erasing every trace of what came before, but then I realized healing isn't about erasure. It's about reclaiming what still holds value. "Any news from your lawyer?" Marcus asked one Sunday, handing me my cup. "Freya's appeal?" "Denied," I said simply. "She'll serve the full 18 months. He nodded, smiling with a kind of grim satisfaction. "Judge Patterson has daughters. She doesn't have much patience for women who tear families apart." I chuckled, sipping my coffee. Good thing I didn't know that before. I might have taken justice into my own hands. Marcus leaned back, sunlight catching the silver at his temples. "You did take justice into your own hands. You just did it legally, and better than most people ever could." We sat in silence for a while, the breeze soft through the roses. "You know what surprises me the most?" I said finally. "I'm grateful it happened." Marcus tilted his head, studying me. "Grateful?" I smiled faintly. Not for the pain, not for the betrayal, but for what came after. If Gerald hadn't destroyed everything, I might never have learned who I was without him. I spent 30 years being what everyone else needed, a wife, a mother, a nurse. I didn't know how to be anything else. I looked out at the garden. Now I do. At 58, I've learned the difference between being alone and being lonely. I wake up when I please. I cook for one without apology. I fill my days with the free clinic downtown where the patients remind me that healing doesn't always mean curing. It sometimes means surviving. I read. I plant. I laugh. And when I look at Marcus across the table, I feel something I'd almost forgotten. Peace that doesn't depend on anyone else. The envelope that started it all sits locked in my lawyer's file cabinet now, its contents archived like a completed case study. The evidence served its purpose. The truth did its work. What remains is simple. A woman who discovered that betrayal can be the beginning, not the end. I thought my life had collapsed that night at the retirement party, but in the rubble, I found something worth keeping. Myself. So if you've made it this far, tell me, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced a betrayal that forced you to rebuild from the ground up? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There are more stories like mine waiting for you, stories that remind us that even in the worst endings, there's still the chance for a new beginning.